everyone, Doc T here with another episode of the Horses Advocate podcast. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it so much. If you haven't yet gone to the horsesadvocate.com website, you should mosey on over and take a look at what's there. But it's going to be changing. The great news, this more on a personal front than anything else, but my son is going to be visiting. He is in the air right now as we speak. He'll be landing in Florida tomorrow sometime. So he's coming from the other side of the world to come home for a little bit, tidy up some loose ends and get some things done, like, for instance, making sure our website is up and running perfectly. So you might see some changes in the next month or two in the way it works. And during that, I plan to keep adding more content, which is going to be good. The subjects that I have where I haven't written anything, but I have some images or just some ideas that I'm using as placeholders there. Hopefully I'll be digging in a little bit deeper and getting that going. So that's kind of exciting. It's a great place to hang out, to learn about horses without an agenda of me trying to sell you a product or a gimmick. It's just all about information and gleaning from human studies, human research over to the horse, because nobody's putting real money or unbiased money into research in horses. It just isn't happening. What I mean by that, if you haven't heard me say this before, but if there's a product behind the research, then it's biased. They want to sell you the product, so they're going to give you all the good information. They won't always give you all the bad information, all the negative side effects, or the fact that it didn't work on so many horses. And that's one of the things, bias right there. I find that even a university, and I know that there's a university right now working in the gut microbiome and trying to develop a product that they could administer to a horse whose microbiome needs fixing. And I'm a firm believer in the fecal transplants. They work so well in humans. I'm sure they'll work in horses too. And I've seen it. I've got one or two horses in the practice that have had a fecal transplant and it's worked. I mean, saved their lives from colitis. So I know it works. But if they're doing all the research with an eye on trying to make something, well, I'm going to be a little cynical. If it works, that's great. And if it helps the lives of a lot of horses, I think that's wonderful. But if it doesn't, then there's a lot of research that's going to get out there that might not be helpful. I know I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, as you say, or the conspiracy theorist or anything like that. I just like to look at data. Just give me the data and let me figure out what's going on. I'll give you an example. I listened to a gastroenterologist, human, who's also a researcher who just likes looking at poop. I know it sounds like a disgusting story, but that poop brought a lot of information to her. And we now know that telephone call. We now know that a variety of microbes, a broad variety of microbes in the gut usually leads to a really healthy life. And when you have a limited amount, like just one or two, the person's probably not going to be that healthy. The microbiome, also known as the microbiota, is the organization of bacteria. And you could even say it's not just bacteria, it's actually viruses, parasites, protozoa that live in a balanced nature. They live comfortably in a situation. Just imagine your town where you live. And in your town, you have a bunch of cowboys and dressage ladies. I'm really bringing this home to you guys. A bunch of hippies and a bunch of punk rockers, but they all want the same thing. They want safety. They want a sense of community. They want their own space to express themselves. And they all live in harmony. And when the old lady is trying to cross the street, it doesn't matter who you are, you help the old lady across. That's the way it is in the beautiful society that we always dream about. Well, that is a good microbiome. But in reality, we have what's called a dysbiosis. The prefix DYS is, you can think of it as a dysfunction, meaning that it's not normal. And when you have a dysbiosis, it means that the microbiome in that area has been disrupted. It's no longer there. Some of these people in your town, they're all good, but in comes somebody who wants to put up a crack house. And if there's just one crack house, we all get worried about it, but we don't hide and get worried that we're going to be stabbed in the middle of the night or in the middle of the day, apparently nowadays. But let's say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 crack houses show up, and now we have a complete dysbiosis because they're now starting to run the town. And so the good guys are now hiding in their homes, afraid to go out because they're going to die. And that's what happens in a lot of people and a lot of horses and a lot of animals that are living in a life of, I'm going to call it ease. In other words, you and I both know that if we're hungry, like I'm sitting here right now and I can see right over there, there's a McDonald's. I could get out of this car, walk across the street and buy any of their food. And if I don't like it, there's a Wendy's over there, Waffle House over there. There's food everywhere. And don't forget the convenience stores where I can load up on, cupcakes and breads and candy. It's everywhere. I don't have to fight for it. I don't have to scrape the ground and plant seeds. I don't have to say, well, I got to spend a day here going out and hunting some rabbits. I don't have to do any of that. Life is so easy for us. And I'm just reading a book. I think it's called Life of Ease. It's a fascinating book. I'll get it to you in a second. I tend to do this while talking. I come up. Oh, The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter, as in the celebration Christians have Easter, E-A-S-T-E-R. It's interesting. He's saying in his book what I've been saying all along. These horses are living a life of ease. They have fans on them. They are away from the rain. I know some of you are going to say, oh, no, not my horses. They're out 24/7. They got to fend for themselves. Or do they? They've got a pasture. They don't have to migrate, 100 or 1,000 miles. They have, if it gets too cold, they're still in the same paddock. You put a blanket on them. If it's too hot, you put a fan on them. And you call up the store and they deliver all the hay that you want and all the other supplements and grains that everyone's saying is important for your horse, and it's delivered and stacked in your feed room. There are a few people listening to this. I get it. That's not what's happening at their place. But for those who I see, as I go from farm to farm, they are just like everybody else, just buying into what is working right now. And thank goodness, because a lot of us couldn't afford the land to keep our horses. So we have to supplement with these foods to keep them alive. But when you start to add unnatural foods at unnatural times of the year, you can create this dysbiosis that we're talking about. Great example is obviously sugar. Everyone talks about sugar and how bad sugar is for you, and yet you don't understand. Sugar, especially in the form of glucose, is so critical. It's you can't live without it. You don't want to go zero sugar, because as soon as you go zero sugar, there's a lot of things that aren't going to function correctly. And in fact, when you go zero sugar, you're going to be digging into your protein supplies to make sugar. In a normal human, from what I understand, about 15% of our glucose is made by the conversion of amino acids that are the building blocks of proteins. They're converted into glucose naturally. What I find is when you take away all sugar availability, that rises. It's called gluconeogenesis. And so it keeps taking protein or amino acids away. And without amino acids, you can't build muscle or other things that are protein. This is why the top line goes away. This is why the suspensory ligaments start to fail in horses from 10 to 14 years of age, unless they're race horses, then it's younger. It's why the hair coat looks so bad. It's why the immune system starts to fall apart. It's why neurotransmitters such as dopamine start to fail, and we get neurodegenerative diseases that everyone calls Cushing's. We have all these things occurring basically because there's no sugar available. And the reason why there's no sugar is because you're feeding too much of it. Whoa, wait, that didn't make sense, did it? But the more sugar you eat, the more insulin comes around and scavenges it. Anyway, they scavenge the glucose because you don't want it free floating in your blood vessels, because it'll damage the blood vessels and lead to the number one killer of humans called atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease. And you don't want free floating glucose. So insulin comes around and grabs it and hoards it. It throws it in a muscle cell. And if the muscle cell is full and they start turning it away, that's called insulin resistance. So now the insulin will go over to the liver and say, do you need to store some of this glucose in your glycogen? And they say, no, we're full too. So there's only one other place, the three places, muscle, liver, there's only one other place that the glucose can go, and that is converted into free fatty acids, and they're shoved into your fat cells, into the body fat cells. And we continue to gain more and more body fat. I don't like to say weight, but just body fat. Everyone says, my horse is gaining or losing weight. I said, well, look, if I chopped off my arm, I'd instantly weigh 30 pounds less. I will have reached my goal instantly. So we have to talk about body fat, what you're looking for. And everyone says, oh my gosh, my horse is losing weight. I've heard this 3 or 4 times just this past week. And it's because they're losing their body fat that they're exposing the fact that there's no muscle underneath, because that's been absorbed because there's no sugar in the system. The more sugar you feed, the more insulin will pack it in as body fat, leaving no sugar left for the brain and other functions like mucous membranes. It's a mucopolysaccharide. It's like all your immunoglobulins or antibodies, those are proteins, but they're globbed onto an oligosaccharide, which means a very big molecule of sugar, and transported around that way. So sugars have a lot of really important functions. And if we aren't getting enough sugar in our diet, we're going to die, or we're going to just fade away while being fat. This is why fat horses end up with so much diseases, because they're consuming all the proteins. Which brings me to the next thing. And I don't want to spend too long. I mean, I'm just sitting here charging the car. I don't have that much time. But I want to get this podcast out this week and tell you that there's a lot of things I've got in my mind that I want to get out in the next 6 months, between now and the end of the year. And one of those is to take and bring to you a very small section of what I'm trying to tell you, and expand that and take some time to really focus on what that is. And the one I want to work on next is antibodies. Antibodies are immunoglobulins. And I can't say that 3 times too fast. It's just immunoglobulins, and how they defend against disease and what they're made of, and why proteins are so important to make sure that these things are working right. Once you understand just how much proteins mean to us, then you're going to take this seriously, that we're underfeeding protein to ourselves and to our horses. So I'll get into that. Not this podcast. I want to delve into it a little bit more. I want to talk about what enzymes are, neurotransmitters. I want to find each protein and spend some time on them, so you can now be aware of how important proteins are in the lives of our horses. My brain is just flying right now. I've got so many ideas I want to talk to you about. I will talk to you about the last week I spent floating horses' teeth, going from farm to farm to farm. And a couple of things happened. One, I met a tooth floater. He just uses hand floats. He uses a mouth speculum. And he's been floating teeth for about 30 years, which makes him my junior. But on the flip side, he was born in 1940, which means he's 82 years old right now. And he says, oh, I float teeth 5 days a week. I'm like, power to you. So this tells me that there's hope that I can make it to 82. And, you know, why not? I'm still enjoying what I do. I like teaching it. I like talking to people about their horses and helping them out. So, yeah, that's pretty cool, 82. Unfortunately, on the same day, I met a veterinarian floating teeth in a barn. And it was awful. I mean, it was just, I can't put it into quality words that expresses my frustration and my disgust. They took a 3-year-old horse, and this was a very calm, very sweet 3-year-old horse with, you know, no big deal, but they, again, medicate these guys with sedatives, not painkillers, but sedatives. And the horse is hung in cross ties, you know, just hanging there. An assistant has to come and lift the head up onto her shoulders while the veterinarian goes in there with a speculum, a light source, and a very rapidly spinning burr that's driven off a motor that's hung from her belt. And she's just grinding away. And there's blood coming out. I mean, there's a lot of blood coming out. And no, she didn't pull a cap. There are no caps coming out. That was just her taking the spinning burr up against vascular tissues. And the blood is just all over the place. And I'd heard people had said that these things can be bloodbaths. And I'm not saying all veterinarians using power equipment create bloodbaths. That's not what I'm saying at all. But this one was. And it was in front of me. It would have taken a lot of courage for me to whip the camera out and say, hey, do you mind if I take a picture of this? You'll just have to take my word for it. The horse wasn't moving. I mean, the horse didn't move its head at all. I did ask this vet, what do you think of EOTRH? If you don't know what that is, it's a disease of the bones that underlie the incisor teeth. Those are the nipping teeth, the ones up front under the lips. And as the bone becomes resorbed, the tooth resorbs, and actually doesn't. It actually tries to hold on for dear life, but then they become decay and they break and they fall out. It stinks and the gums recede. And I used to call it ugly teeth of old horses because I didn't have a name for it. It wasn't in the textbooks in the 1980s. Just keep that in mind. 1984, when I graduated, I'd read every book there was on dentistry, and that was only one. And there was nothing about EOTRH in there. It's a new disease, and we have to ask ourselves, why is EOTRH a new disease? What precipitated this disease? And I go into that. You can read my blog, What is the Cause of EOTRH? It's on the website. And I go into it using some pretty good information from pretty smart people. Anyway, she said, oh yeah, we have a lot of EOTRH. Now to me, right there, why? Do you want to discuss why we're having EOTRH? But no, without even taking a breath, she moves into the next sentence. And we're removing a lot of teeth because of it. And I just became silent. I couldn't. Here's a veterinarian who is circumventing horsemanship by using sedation. She's causing tissue damage with the burr. She's not interested in understanding diseases. She is jumping to the conclusion that these teeth have to be removed. And the pinnacle of this whole discussion was, here I am with just 39 years, I'll be 40 years floating teeth with 77,000 floats under my belt, either that I've done or have helped people do, taught people. But that's a lot of horses that I've seen. And I think that if I were around a senior, like somebody who's 82, like my good friend Dr. Belden down in Wellington, every chance I get, I want to ask him questions, because if somebody's been in the game longer, they're going to have answers. And here's a gal pretty young at Floating Teeth in front of a guy who could give her a lot of information, but she shut down. And I call it tribalism, because we see tribalism everywhere. We have our tribe, we have our beliefs. We talk about which president we think is the best, which political agenda seems to be the best, what our thoughts are on a disease, a pandemic. And we hide behind our belief systems, and we don't want to hear somebody else's. We call it cognitive laziness. And cognitive laziness showed its ugly head multiple times this trip. Here it was with this veterinarian. She could have reached out and said, hey, tell me why you don't use power tools. What's the advantage of hand floating? You know, and could I learn this so I could offer my clients both power and hand? No, it was just shut down. I'm obviously not a person she wants to talk to. The owner of the horse also stated that this horse, the 3-year-old, used to be really in bad shape when she got him, and it's been there for a couple of months, and now the horse is doing so much better. But she said when she called to find out what this horse had been fed, the previous owner said, well, we don't believe in feeding grain. To which the owner said, can you believe that? Somebody won't feed grain to horses? And at that point I said, well, I'm in the wrong barn. I mean, there are some people you just don't want to, it'll be too hard to try and change their mind. No matter how competent you are, it just isn't going to happen. I'm sure some of you who have subscribed to a certain way of taking care of your horse have trouble explaining to somebody else that's the case. And I ran into that several times this week. People who say, I started that diet, you know, the no grain diet, and the horse is losing weight, so I stopped it. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand that losing the body fat is actually healthier, and it's step 1 or stage 1. And as they equilibrate, they can start gaining back their body weight. And who cares? It's July here, which in our part of the world is pretty darn hot with lots of green grass. So it's not going to be critical. It's not life threatening. And I tried to nudge them back into maybe you want to lose some body fat. I had another person said, but my horse is a jumper. I want him to be fat. I'm like, yeah, but then I told them, if I place an 80-pound anvil, and she didn't even know what an anvil was. That was amazing. I said, you know what, the farrier puts a shoe on, starts banging on it, that big metal thing. Oh, that's what that's called. Yeah, trust me. It's just nice gal. She hung out and learned so much, but that was a shock. And I said, what if I place that anvil on your foot really gently, really slowly? You're going to feel it, right? Yeah. But you're not going to move your foot because you know that this is part of a demonstration and it's not hurting you, so you let me do it. So then I said, how high do you jump your horse? And she says 3 feet. I said, all right, or meter or whatever. I said, fine. I said, let me raise this anvil up to 3 feet and I'm just going to drop it. Are you going to move your foot? And she says, yeah. Well, that's force equals mass times acceleration, which means the mass of the horse is going to be the same here or on the moon, but the acceleration toward the center of our planet is greater than toward the center of the moon. So we have less gravity on the moon. So if we drop the horse, it's not going to hurt. If we drop the horse here on Earth on your foot, it's going to hurt. And if you want to add 80 pounds of anvil to your horse, it's going to be jumping over the fence and landing with that much more force when it comes off and lands on one front foot. And if you don't train the horse right and prepare them to take that concussion, and you don't feed the horse right, so it doesn't have the connective tissue to keep the bones, tendons, ligaments, and muscles strong, you're going to end up with a lame horse. And it's just people have trouble putting all that together. So you got to feed the horse as an athlete, and no athlete out there eats a bunch of sugar and engorges on grains. They just don't. They feed themselves protein. That's how they build their muscle and they build their strength through exercise training program of breaking the muscle down and having it build back up so you have this huge bicep or six-pack ab. But it's not covered up with fat. And the fat, the only way you can get body fat, I can't stress this enough, the only way to get body fat is to take in more sugar than your body needs in a day. And it will take that sugar and convert it into fat and store it in your fat cell, and not just store it in the fat cell, but insulin will come along and it'll guard the gate. He won't let the fat out. And the only way you can get rid of insulin is to lower your glucose to a meaningfully low level. And that will allow the fat to disappear. And unfortunately, if you do it too rapidly, you can get sick. You can get release of some toxins that are stored in fat to protect your body. And you'll also be very hungry. So you have to lose maybe 1 or 2 pounds, humans, per month. And in horses, you don't want to see it go off too fast, but you definitely want to see a decrease in body fat and an increase in muscle so that net weight of the horse will stay the same. But these are basic tenets of weight loss and diet in both humans and horses. There's a lot of other things that I learned going back to the microbiome where I started and the dysbiosis. A lot of people like to feed prebiotics because the prebiotics are, probiotics. I was jumping ahead. Prebiotics are complex sugars that pass through the small intestine and get digested by the hindgut. So that's what a prebiotic is. Probiotics are organisms that come into the gut and seed it and help out. It's like the sheriff coming into your town to get rid of the crack houses. It'll come in and cause some disruption. And I'm not a firm believer of probiotics in horses or in humans because it has to fight a battle to get through the acid bath of the stomach before they can become established in the rest of the GI tract. And most of the studies show that none of the probiotics that you give in the mouth actually make it in there. So I'm pretty cynical on that, but there's I think one horse product that they say they micro-encapsulate it so it doesn't get digested. I'm like, yeah, okay. And they say they have proof. Yeah, okay. But then I found a probiotic for a human, and this is put together by this gastroenterologist who said, we make one capsule and in there we put in a broad variety of bacteria that we feel a person's gut really needs across the board. And then they put that inside another capsule that's made out of pomegranate, which is a prebiotic and doesn't get digested through the stomach. It gets digested in the hindgut from where the bacteria will come out. That's where we really want the bacteria to be living in. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So that's coming. And they just gave me an email today saying, okay, we're going to start off slow with this stuff and give your gut a chance to equilibrate because you're going to get kind of upset. And I understand that. I mean, you and I both know that if you eat the wrong food and you get bloated and you start passing gas and you get diarrhea, this is your gut microbiome rejecting what you just ate. I mean, that's it. That's the bottom line. So I'm looking forward to this, but I'll tell you another really interesting thing that this gastroenterologist said. We all know, and if you don't know, I'm going to tell you that they've been monitoring the fecal wastewater of New York City. They have 14 wastewater plants, and people have been going in there and culturing what's in there, looking for SARS-CoV-2, the causative agent of COVID-19. They're finding it everywhere. They've done this in other cities. I believe it's St. Louis. And I think one of the California towns, I can't remember. And they're finding vast amounts of SARS-CoV-2 or COVID disease in the waste. So this woman has been looking at the waste of many people. And because she's not just a researcher, but she's actually an MD, she goes out to treat the rural areas around, I think she's in Baltimore, to help these people get, with their health things. And several of her patients have COVID. I mean, a lot of them during the past 2 years. And she found it fascinating that you can have a husband and a wife who are sleeping together, who are kissing each other, who are obviously in love. One has COVID, the other doesn't. And she's like, what the heck is going on? So she decided that she would look at their fecal, their poop. We'll call it poop from now on. And she found that every case of COVID also had a microbiome deficient in bifidobacterium, which is a species of bacteria. They had 0 bifidobacterium. And every case that didn't have COVID, that should have had COVID, that seemed to be immune to it, all of them had a plenty amount of bifidobacterium and a broad variety of bacteria in their gut. And she thought it was fascinating. She thinks that there is a propensity for bifidobacterium to actually consume this virus. And it's something she's working on. So this supplement that I'm getting, that I'm going to try, is loaded in bifidobacterium to make sure that I don't get COVID while I'm driving around, or any other disease. I mean, influenza, it seems like I'm almost immune from these things, but my digestive tract is very sensitive to what I eat out here. I have to be very careful of what I eat, and I'm hoping that this is going to help me. There's another thing, one last thing. I'm going to try and make this podcast a little bit shorter, but there's one other thing that I'm trying this week. It's arriving Friday or Saturday. I can't wait. It's called Ketone IQ, and that's ketones in a bottle. Now, a lot of people don't know what a ketone is, but a ketone is a special type of fat created by your body from free fatty acids. And ketones can jump right into the Krebs cycle and give you an amazing amount of energy. And if you start to lose body fat, or you do intermittent fasting and reduce the amount of fuel that's going in your mouth, and your body has to go to the reserves and put that in, you're going to make some ketones. Now, what's really interesting is the use of ketone as a fuel only was discovered in 2008. So if you're not good with math, that's only 14 years ago. And we've all heard about ketone diets and Dr. Atkins and ketosis and all this stuff, but we really didn't have good evidence until 2008, when a scientist named Richard Veitch put everything together. And Richard Veitch, if you guys are into biochemistry, was trained by a guy named Hans Krebs of the Krebs cycle. So, and Hans Krebs was trained by Otto Warburg in 1932, and Otto Warburg discovered glycolysis, which is how glucose turns into something that we can use for energy. Hold on, here we go. I have to do that every once in a while just to keep things working. Let the car know I'm alive. So, and if you're not watching this, yes, I am in my car charging. So that's just a little side. Sorry for the interruption. Anyway, so Hans Krebs trained this guy Veitch, who figured out that the fourth fuel is ketones. The first three fuels are fats, sugars, and proteins, because proteins can be burned for fuel as well. But now he's adding ketones, and we're struggling to figure out how to get ketones. And there's tons of ketone precursors. Butter has butyrate in it, and that can be converted to ketones. Triple Crown and their not parent company, but they buy an ingredient which is beauty pearl or butyrate or butyric acid, they're adding it to your horse's feed because they're trying to get your horse to convert that into energy so they don't have to use a lot of sugar. So it keeps the mitochondria flexible. This company started to experiment with ketones, and they gave it to bicyclists at the what's that called? The Prix de France or whatever it's called. And these bicyclists had incredibly increased power output because they would measure how much output these bicyclists put in terms of watts. And their wattage was up and lasted longer when they were on these ketones that they took in. And they got a huge amount of money from the Department of Defense to make something that they could give to our special forces that are working 24/7. They don't get enough sleep. They don't get enough food as they are on a mission, and they want to keep their brain sharp and their bodies functioning. So they gave this company a lot of money to go ahead and make sure these things were safe. And they did. And just this year, they came out with a product that you and I can buy. And I will give you my 2 cents on this. But every morning, most of you know that in my coffee, I put butter and caprylic acid, which is basically a fraction of coconut oil. And I add that plus my collagen to get a nice mix that keeps me in ketosis and also helps me get my protein for the day. My thoughts are, I'm going to eliminate all that because I have to cook my coffee every morning. And here I can just pour out a dose and sip that. I think it's tasteless, but I'll let you know. And I will stay in ketosis until I eat my meal at 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's going to be really cool. I can't wait to try it. And I'll tell you in the future what happens there. But what does that have to do with horses? Because no one's going to be popping ketones into your horse. You got to understand, you and I are carnivores. You could say you're vegetarian, but we're not talking about your belief system or what you practice. I'm just talking about your digestive tract. Your digestive tract is geared up for mostly carnivore diet. And we're omnivores, we do both. But a horse doesn't eat meat at all. We all agree that they're true vegetarians, and they have to consume more plants to get all the broad variety of proteins that they need in a day. That's why they have that big tank back there between their hind legs. That's there to stuff full of vegetation, and it should be a smorgasbord, a variety of plants. And of course, we don't have that because we have a fence up. So we're only feeding them a monograss, basically. Monograss diet, same with the hay. It's just one type, maybe 2, maybe if you're lucky, 3 different types. But it's basically the same food over and over again. So they're not getting the variety where they need all the variety of amino acids. So they're constantly becoming protein deficient. Add on top of that, they're getting hay 24/7, 365, and hay is last summer's grass. And if you don't have any grass or pasture, you're going to have to feed hay. But if you have pasture, why are you feeding pasture and hay? It doesn't make any sense. But the point is, as you reduce the amount of sugar going into your horse's body, the mitochondria, which is the furnace inside the cell, will now decide that, well, there's not enough sugar, so I'll start burning fat. And the fat will start to fly off their body, and they start to make their own ketones. And in fact, cellulose, if you take my nutrition course, you'll understand that cellulose is digested by the gut bacteria into acetate pyruvate butyrate, and these are short chain fatty acids, and they can become ketones and fuel the horse, and it's a much better fuel. They're calmer, they've got a better work ethic, they recover faster from exercise. And that's the secret. The more cellulose they eat, the more fat they basically are eating. So you and I think of fat, we think of butter, we think of, what's on the outside of our steak. We think of all these fatty foods, but that's not where you get fat from. You get fat from the breakdown of cellulose. So that's really important. That's the key. Stop feeding sugar, make sure they have plenty of cellulose. These horses will have all the ketones they need, and they'll survive just fine. Same with you and me. If we just cut out the sugar and start focusing on getting our minimum amount of protein in, which is ideally a gram per pound of body weight. Same with your horse, but everyone's going for half a gram because they're so scared of protein. But to do that, and I think this has been a very eclectic. I've shot at about 5 or 6 different things. I just want to give you a smorgasbord, okay? A second time I said it, no, I can't spell it. But I want to give you a variety of thoughts of what we do at the Horses Advocate. So it might get you interested to come on board and say, okay, I need to dig deeper. I need to understand these things a little bit more. And in the future of my podcast, I'd like to just take immunoglobulins or antibodies and discuss what they are, or how the immune system works, or what happens. I've done several diseases, but dig into something that's definitely a protein deficiency disease. Like at the Horse Advocate, we talked about connective tissue and how that affects everything in the horse. I mean, everything you are, 30% of you is connective tissue. And if we're not feeding it right, the connective tissue breaks down, and hence we have all these lamenesses going on that we didn't have back in the 80s or earlier. So I'm just trying to give you as much information as possible. And I think I'm doing that. I just don't, I'm worried that I'm what I call fire hosing your brain. In other words, I'm flooding you with so much information, you go away with your head spinning. You're like, whoa, 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 what did he just say? So I guess what I'm going to do in the next couple of weeks, because it's a pretty light schedule in the summer, and my son is going to be here, say hallelujah, and he and I are going to sit down and kind of go over the website and make sure that we've got everything lined up and it's working properly. There's some glitches that we want to get rid of. And we're going to make that a smooth operating machine. And then from there, I'm going to target certain things that I want to talk about on podcasts, and then just keep putting them out, boom, boom, boom. But I get a lot of my ideas from going from farm to farm and hearing the same excuses. Oh, I don't want to feed soy products to my horse. Why? Well, it could cause esterification, or it messes up their estrogen. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. I mean, these are legumes and these are horses. It just doesn't do that. What about glyphosate? And I talk about that. What about genetic modifications? And I talk about that. And I lay out everything, and then I ask them to balance all their concerns versus what they're seeing in their horse. It's got suspensory ligament, it's lame, it's got Cushing's disease, it's got bad skin in the summer, and it's got that ventral midline dermatitis or summer sores, and the hair coat doesn't look great. And all of this can be alleviated, literally alleviated, with targeted nutrition by feeding the horse the way it evolved to be fed, not according to the way some company says you should feed your horse, because they're not out here to help your horse. They just aren't. All right. I apologize to all the companies that are trying to help your horse, but they're not. And I talked to one horse barn owner who said her veterinarian, who I know, she's brilliant. I mean, she's absolutely brilliant. She is so good with horses, so good with people, but she will not listen to anything we say about nutrition. She puts all of her faith in these big companies and says, no, they wouldn't be doing this if it was harming your horse. No, it's all good for you. And yet I see horses everywhere, non-sweaters, unable to be clipped or groomed, don't want to go on a horse trailer, fight you the whole way, start bucking underneath you instead of just having a nice, good workout, becoming exhausted or just getting sick. And I'm tired of it, because back in the 70s, when I started working with horses, that didn't happen. And the wisdom of, I'm going to use the word wisdom to equate to the amount of time spent in something. And I would love to have somebody who has more than 50 years with horses come on and talk about this and see if I'm crazy or not. But unfortunately, most of you people listening to this are only been in horses for 10 years, maybe 20, maybe 30. And you have been brought into this industry after the grain companies have claimed it. and the supplement companies have claimed it. I come from before then. This is why I still hand float horses, because it works and it's better for the horse. But talk to somebody who's been in it for only 10 years and they don't have any argument. All they have is what they've been told. And their agenda is to do what they do. And I'm trying to fight that system. And if I live to 82, which I hope to live well beyond, this is where these podcasts are going to come from. It's hopefully won't sound repetitive, but it's going to have the same theme. Let's go back to what the horse evolved to eat. Let's go back to how the evolution of our horse created what's sitting in front of you, and let's stop messing things up. Ditto for ourselves. So I'm going to state this, it's going to be on air now. When I turn 70, which is 15 months from now, when I turn 70, I hope to have lean body mass and strong muscles and a sharp mind. And if I can do it, you can do it. And so can your horse. That's what we're aiming for. We're in it together. We're in it to grow, to learn, and to help others. And if you share this podcast and you share all the podcasts with others, and you come over to the horsesadvocate.com and you spend time there digging in, or if you decide that you think that this is worth it, you want to show your appreciation by becoming a member, that's great. I'll give you some extra stuff like our monthly rounds where we delve deep into a topic, or monthly Ask Me Anythings, or your ability to set up an hour telephone call with me, which is always longer than an hour, where we can discuss some things. That's what you're doing. And I appreciate all of you who have supported the Horse Advocate membership. So that's it. I'm going to hang up. I'm going to skedaddle out of here and make it home pretty soon, and then pick up my son at the airport and dig deep and get this website run for you. Okay, sorry to babble at the end. This is all spontaneous, no notes. It's just what's up here, and it's all just like spilling around. So I appreciate you spending some time with me. Thank you so much. Also, a shout out to the farm I gave a nutrition talk to. You guys are awesome. Even though there are only 4 people who showed up, those 4 people now know how to feed a horse. And if you have a barn and you're in my neck of the woods, which is kind of extensive, from Florida to Louisiana to up to New England, and you want to put together a talking engagement, I love teaching this. I'll put on a show live, where I just jump on the carousel that's spinning around, and I just drill deep in all these subjects really fast and get people's heads turned. But people are thirsting. They want to know how to feed their horse correctly, and if I can help in any way. But of course, just send them to my website. That's the easiest way, especially if you don't live anywhere where I go. Just go to the website. It's all there. It's all free. All right. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.
Hey, everyone. Doc T here. Thank you for listening to my content. Would you do me a huge favor? Would you please subscribe, comment, like, thumbs up, and give a star review? However it's presented to you, I want you to do that. There are 2 reasons. The first, of course, is to improve this product. This way I know what you like, what you don't like, what I can improve upon, what topics you want me to cover. But more importantly, it's also going to help others find me. And by doing that, you are now engaged in this mission of helping horses thrive in a human world. By you helping, we can reach others. And that I would be so grateful for. And remember, go to thehorsesadvocate.com for updates on this information. Thehorsesadvocate.com. And again, thank you so much for being here. Doc T out.